Subba. I work at Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I've been working at Ministry for the past 9 years as section officer. Today I'm here to cover this issue of comprehension passes, which I believe covers your 10 marks. Before we actually venture into passes and before I tell you what it is about, let's first briefly discuss the concept of comprehension. If you are an aspirant of foreign service as well, besides the general services, you might see that they have this additional paper on passes, on comprehension. So no matter which services you choose, you always have a passage, you always have a comprehension. So what's the significance of having comprehension? Well, the reason why they always give you passes is to understand how much you have understood the language. It's a very important part of understanding any language. That's why they always have passes, they always have comprehension. So comprehension, actually, to comprehend means to understand, and comprehension is important because it is an important part of understanding any language. From the comprehension, they will gauge how much you know about any particular language. That's why they always have this comprehension. Before we enter into passes, I'll tell you how to approach a passes. कुनै पनि एउटा passage-लाई चाहिँ कसरी approach गर्ने भने, so these are the ways to approach a passage. Firstly, read the passage silently and carefully. Of course, it goes without saying that passage should be read silently. You're in an examination hall, so obviously you cannot scream on top of your lungs, but then you cannot mumble either. Like, it will disturb your friends around you. So read the passage silently but carefully. Use clues and keywords to understand the passage. This is very important because sometimes the passages are really long, and then if you miss out the keywords or if you miss out the clue, and if you go to the answer section and then you remember that, okay, I don't remember anything about this passage, you need to go back. So you will keep going back, you'll be wasting more of your time. So it's very important that while reading your passage for the first time, you find the keywords, you find the clues, and then you underline those keywords and clues so that it's more time saving for you when you approach the questions. Number 3 is do not read questions before you have finished reading the passage. Sometimes what happens is that people might give you this trick that you have to read question before you actually start reading the passage. But then see, what happens is that sometimes they give you very tricky questions which are the answers are partially correct, and then you read only the questions, and then you read only the question, and then you go to that particular word in the passage. But then कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ पछाडी conditional sentences भन्छ नि, if sentences या कुनै conjunctionsहरू युज गरेर त्यो अगाडिको आर्गुमेन्टलाई चाहिँ पछाडिको आर्गुमेन्ट्सहरूले चाहिँ च्यालेन्ज गरिरहेको हुन्छ. सो यस्तो केसेसमा चाहिँ if you read only questions and then go back to the passage, then your answers would be incorrect. So it's very important that you do not read questions. It's a jump गर्नु हुँदैन. You have to first read the passage and then approach the question. Try to make a stable connection between what you read and what knowledge you already have. But यो भनिराख्न आवश्यक छैन, because that's what normal human beings do. But still, as a reminder that कहिलेकाहीँ there's some information in your brain and there's something in the passage. So try to make a stable connection between what you already have in your head and then what's there on the passage. Number 5 is that do not haste into answering the questions until you are sure what the question demands. So 3 and 5 are somewhat related. कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ question मात्र पढ्यो अनि त्यो questionसँग related keywordहरू मात्र हेरेर माथि गएर passage पढ्यो, अनि कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ हेस्टमा रसमा आन्सर गर्यो, and then you are not even sure what the question demands. So be very sure what the question demands and then start answering the questions. Of course, number 6 is what we all do, answer the questions carefully. And questions of course carefully नै answer गर्छौँ. It wasn't very necessary to put it there, but still sometimes we need to be reminded simplest of things. Let's move on. So steps to follow. These are not necessarily all the steps we have to follow, but it's good if you follow these steps. Read the passage silently. You have to read the passage silently and carefully. Read the passage thoroughly and carefully. Again, keywords are underline garde agadi jane, तर thoroughly jane, carefully jane. Use the clues to understand the passage. Clues, keywords हरूलाई चाहिँ underline गर्दै जाने, so that पछि questions चाहिँ answer गर्न थालेपछि you can just jump back to those underlined words and then it's easier for you to answer the passage. Try to understand meaning of hard words as according to the context. Do not skip difficult words. कहिलेकाहीँ कस्तो हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि प्यासेजमा न्यू वर्ड्सहरू आइदिन्छ, which is of course a very normal thing, and then you may not know all the words in this whole world. So त्यतिखेर चाहिँ के गर्ने भन्दाखेरि it's always in the context, it's a passage. So सबै कुराहरू कन्टेक्स्टमा हुन्छ, कन्टेक्स्ट बुझेर कन्टेक्स्ट हेरेर चाहिँ डिफिकल्ट वर्डहरूको मिनिङ ट्राई टु डिसर्न द मिनिङ. डु नट स्किप डिफिकल्ट वर्ड. यो छैन, यो मलाई आउँदैन भन्ने बित्तिकै त्यसलाई स्किप गर्ने होइन कि एकचोटि ब्रोडर कन्टेक्स्टमा ब्रोडर पिक्चरमा हेरेर यु ट्राई टु अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड द मिनिङ. 5 is answer the question carefully. As I said before, you have to answer the question carefully, and why we are putting so much stress on carefulness is because कहिलेकाहीँ रसमा हामीहरूले grammar, spelling, punctuationहरू चाहिँ wrong गरिरहेको हुन्छौँ. So you have to be very careful about the grammar you are using, about the spelling, about the punctuations. So these are the steps you need to follow. So tips and tricks. So after the steps, let's see the tips and tricks to approach the passage. Go through the alternatives as well before finalizing your answer. At times there are partially correct and some fully correct answer. So only when you check all the options you would know which is the correct one. Like you have 4 options. Option A may you feel that okay, this is the right answer. And time saving garnako lagi you don't really bother reading the remaining 3 answers. These people are very smart. They are not going to give you 3 diametrically opposite answers and 1 correct answer. They are going to give you partially correct, and then there's 1 answer which is fully correct. So you have to go through all your alternatives like A, B, C, D ma A चाहिँ यस्तो छ, B यस्तो छ, C छ, D छ. So the चारवटामा which is more correct, you need to find out that correct answer and write your option. Mark the keywords by underlining them. मैले अघिदेखि भनिरहेको छु, you need to mark the keywords and you need to underline them किनकि it's very time crunching. So time save गर्नको लागि it's very helpful if you mark the keywords and underline them. It helps you to discover logical connections in the passage. Passage को लागि चाहिँ logical connection गर्नुपर्छ. You need to picture like what the essay is about भन्ने कुरा तपाईले बुझ्नै पर्छ. So keywords help you to establish this logical connections in the passage. Avoid short forms and abbreviations in your answer. Always give answers in complete sentences. So अहिले चाहिँ के भएछ भन्दाखेरि because we use lot of keypads, whether in computer or in our mobile phone, we have this tendency of using abbreviations, and I'm not talking about abbreviations like BRB or LOL, but then see, whenever you're writing or even using words like don't and won't and can't, you know, that's not correct when you're writing in English. You have to write do not, you have to write cannot. Sometimes you're writing UR, YOU apostrophe RE. You cannot write that. You have to write YOU space ARE. So you have to be very careful that you do not abbreviate your words in your answer. So be careful about that. So this is the passage which is from 2071, from the year 2071. Read the passage below and answer the question that follows. So let me read the passage for you. This is actually very tricky passage. I'm telling you, this is quite. This is not as easy as it appears. However, there is a keyword which, if you underline, it just makes so much sense. I'm not going to tell you the keyword here. Let me read out the passage and then I'll tell you which is the keyword that will help you to make a logical connection in the passage, and that will help you to understand what the passage is about. Through human history, there have been many stringent taboos concerning watching other people or eating in the presence of others. So the first sentence says, human history ma चाहिँ there have been many strict taboos. Taboos भनेको चाहिँ like restrictions or prohibitions, they are called taboos. And every society have certain taboos. So human history भरि चाहिँ there have been many strict taboos, but then those taboos they're talking about is about watching other people or eating on the presence of others. So अरूको अगाडि खाने या अरूलाई हेर्ने इस्युमा चाहिँ there have been many strict taboos in the human history. There have been attempts to explain these taboos in terms of inappropriate social relationship, either between those who are involved and those who are not simultaneously involved, in the satisfaction of a bodily need, or between those who are already satiated and those who appear to be shamelessly gorging. So, यो जुन यो stringent taboosहरू छ, यो जुन strict taboosहरू छ, there have been many attempts to explain these taboos. र त्यो taboosहरूलाई चाहिँ explain गर्ने attemptsहरू भएको छन् in terms of inappropriate social relationship. र social relationship कसको बिचमा भन्दाखेरि those who are involved and those who are not simultaneously involved in the satisfaction of bodily need, or between those who are already satiated, जो खाएर एकदमै पहिले satiate भइसकेको छ, सन्तुष्ट भइसकेको छ, and those जो चाहिँ shamelessly they're gorging, they are eating up. So त्यस्तो peopleहरू बिचको inappropriate social relationship लाई चाहिँ explain गर्ने attemptहरू भएको छन् हैन. Undoubtedly such element exists in the taboo, but there is an additional element with a much more fundamental importance. So see, look at the words here. There's an additional element. So you, despite all of this happening, despite all of these attempts to explain taboos, there's an additional element. So you have to, if you are at home and if you're practicing this, you have to underline the word additional element and fundamental importance. So additional element aako cha tyo chai which is, it is of fundamental importance. It is not of like small importance. It is of fundamental importance. There an important kura aako cha additional element chai. So what is this additional element? In prehistoric times, when food was so precious and the onlookers so hungry, not to offer half of the little food one had was unthinkable, since every glance was a plea for life. पहिला चाहिँ in the prehistoric time, food was so precious, which means when you say something is so precious, which means it's so scarce. त्यो एकदमै कम थियो, त्यही भएर त्यो precious भएको छ. So food was very precious and the onlookers so hungry. Like the people who would be watching you when you are eating, it's one of the taboo. Like you cannot watch people when they are eating. It's one of the taboo. So the taboo किन भयो भन्दाखेरि the onlookers were so hungry. They would be so hungry and you would be eating your food that not offering half of the little food one had was unthinkable, since every glance was a plea for a life. If you do not give the food you have, whatever you are eating, if you do not give half of the food to whoever is watching you, that might cause death of that person. So starvation could त्यो level to at that time. Further, during those times, people existed in nuclear or extended family groups. So त्यति बेला चाहिँ people, they didn't live alone. They used to live in a family or extended family groups, and the sharing of the food was literally supporting one's family or by extension preserving oneself. So if someone is watching you at that time and if you don't give food to that person might die. And since people used to live in a group, if you give your food to that person who's looking at you, you are not just giving food to that single person, you are by extension giving the food to other people as well. So this is the passage. यसबाट हामीले के बुझ्यौं भन्दाखेरि, as I said before, this is additional element and fundamental importance. Additional element is a fundamental importance. The additional element के भयो भन्दाखेरि, we came to know that food was precious, food was so scarce at that time, and not sharing your food was equivalent to endangering life of a person and by extension the person's family. So this much we understood from the passage. So let's move on to the questions. This is like I said before, it's quite tricky and quite difficult to understand. But I gave you 2 keywords, and on the basis of keywords we are going to decode, we are going to answer all the questions. Okay. In support of the argument in the passage about the validity of taboos, eating against in the presence of others who are not eating would imply that the society. So argument के थियो? Validity of taboos against eating in the presence of others who are not eating. So आफूले खाइरहेको बेलामा अरूले जसले who are not getting to eat, उनीहरुको प्रेजेन्समा चाहिँ आफूले खाँदा चाहिँ what does that imply about the society? Society को बारेमा के भन्छ? Had always had a plentiful supply of food, which is wrong. किनकि if society always had a plentiful supply of society, then everyone can eat. Like I can eat, you can eat, everyone would be full, and it wouldn't be considered as a taboo. Emphasize the need to share worldly good. This is quite this seems to be quite correct, but like I said before, you need to check out all the options. On it is you need to find the answer which is closest to the argument. Emphasize the value of privacy. I don't think we are talking about the value of privacy here. Discourage social interaction. Again, this doesn't discourage social interaction. It just implies that society, it just emphasizes the need to share worldly good. आफूसँग भएको जे worldly good छ, be it food or be it something else, there's a need to share with others. So question number 1 ko answer would be option B, emphasize the need to share worldly good. So let's move on to question number 2. The writer's hypothesis concerning the origin of taboos against watching other people eat emphasizes number 1, option A, general palatability, B option is religious significance of food, C is limited availability of food, and D is various sources of food. So जुन यो taboo छ अरूले आफूले खाइरहेको बेला अरूलाई against watching other people eat खाइरहेको मान्छेलाई हेर्न हुँदैन भने जुन taboo छ पहिलाको prehistoric time को सोसाइटीमा त्यो चाहिँ कसरी ओरिजिनेट भयो, हाउ डिड इट ओरिजिनेट, त्यसको रुट केमा छ भन्दाखेरि not general palatability. General palatability means like palate can be used in two ways. It can mean like something tasty, and it can also mean something acceptable. So it's not about general acceptability. It's not about religious significance of food. Food is not that religiously significant that you cannot watch other people eat. It's not about various sources of food. Various sources of food, if there were various sources of food and if it was available to everyone, there wouldn't be any taboo against eating in front of other people. Like सबैसँग food छ भने जसले जतिखेर खाए पनि भयो, जसले खाए पनि भयो, जसलाई हेरे पनि भयो. But then the problem is that the food is so limited. That's why आफूसँग food कम भएको हुनाले अरू कसैले खाइरहेछ भने हेर्न हुँदैन भन्ने एउटा taboo चाहिँ त्यतिखेर क्रिएट भएको. So the correct answer of 2 is limited availability of food. Okay, let's move on to question number 3. According to the passage, the author believes that past attempts to explain some taboos concerning eating are unclear, inelegant, implausible, unimaginative. So unclear भनेको चाहिँ lack of clarity भयो हैन, inelegant भनेको चाहिँ like not elegant, implausible भनेको not possible, and D भनेको unimaginative, not full of imagination. So here the author believes that past attempts to explain some taboos concerning eating are unclear. किनकि first मा चाहिँ the social relationship was explained, but then they did not give this additional information which the author talks about later. So additional information पछि मात्र दिएको हुनाले चाहिँ we can say that past attempts were quite unclear. So the correct answer of 3 is A, unclear. Let's move on to question number 4. In developing the main idea of the passage, the writer does one of the following. So main idea, passage को main idea develop गर्दाखेरि writerले चाहिँ के गर्छ, what does he or she do? Number 1, gives a systematic picture about family life. Well, the writer gives a picture of family life, but it's like we can say that it's not very systematic. B is recognizes a system designed to guide personal behavior. Well, you know, if you think about it, taboo भनेको चाहिँ itself is a system which is designed to guide personal behavior, restrictive behaviors. Taboo भनेको नै restriction हो, prohibition हो. So यो गर्दा हुन्छ, यो गर्दा हुँदैन. Even in our society we have a lot of taboos. So taboo भनेको आफै नै it's a system which is designed to guide personal behavior. So I don't think the writer is recognizing a system, because the word taboo itself means it's a system that guides personal behavior by restricting certain things to do. C is simplifies a complex biological phenomena by explaining it in terms of social needs. It definitely is a complex biological phenomena, and he talks about the social need, but I don't think he simplifies this complex biological phenomena. Like if you see this is partially correct, this is partially correct, this is partially correct, you just cannot negate the answer as completely false. But let's see, among all these options we have to find which is more correct. So let's see option number D. The writer redefines that earlier attempts to explain the origins of taboos in society. Well, if you recall the passage, then the writer definitely adds that in the past there were other attempts to understand the origin of taboos, but there is an additional information that is of fundamental importance. So what is the author trying to do, the writer trying to do? The writer is trying to redefine the earlier attempts to explain the origin of taboos in society. So, amongst all these 4 options, which where 3 are partially correct, you just cannot say that they are outright wrong. Of all this option A, B, C and D, we can say that D is more correct. So, question number 4, the correct answer is D. Okay, so let's see question number 5. Which one of the following phrases best state the central ideas of the passage? Passage ko central idea ke थियो? What was the passage about? The passage was about origin of different kind of taboos regarding watching people and eating food. And they were passed at them to explain the social relationship, these taboos. However, there is the new additional information which is of fundamental importance. The additional information ke थियो भन्दाखेरि there was scarcity of food, and because of the scarcity of food, it was taboo to look at someone while eating food. And if somebody is caught eating watching someone eating the food, यदि कसैले चाहिँ आफूले खाइरहेको बेला अरू कुनै मान्छेले हेरिरहेको देख्छ भने that's a plea for life, किनकि the food was so scarce, only hungry people would look at them. अनि त्यसरी हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ you need to give half of your food, and if you give half of your food to that person who is watching you, you are by extension saving the person's life as well as saving the life of his family, his whole extended family. So that was what the passage was about. So त्यो passage say, keep that in your mind and see which one of the following phrases best state the central idea of the passage. Social relationship is again partially correct, because taboo भनेको नि तपाईको social relationshipलाई चाहिँ control गर्ने, prohibit गर्ने, restrict गर्ने, यो गर्नु मिल्छ, यो गर्न मिल्दैन भनेर तपाईको social relationshipलाई चाहिँ control गर्ने एउटा system हो taboo भनेको. So this is partially correct. Survival of the self, which is again partially correct. Survival of the fittest, in a way you can justify this answer, but it was more about availability and scarcity of food and not about survival of the fittest. And if you see the option D, survival of the group, you can see that if you feed one person, you are by extension feeding and helping to survive a whole family, a whole group of people. So in light of that information, you can see that option A, B, C, D matches the closest to you, the most correct one is survival of the group. So this is the passage. Like I said before, it's not very easy passage to understand, but once you know this keyword and once you underline the keyword, the meaning of the passage becomes clear and you'll be able to answer these questions correctly. So let's move on to vocabulary section. Vocabulary section again contains 5 questions and each question carry 2 marks. So that means it covers 10 marks. In vocabulary, number one thing is that you need to have a good command over the language, over the words. You need to understand the words, and if you don't, you can see the context. You can understand some of these idioms by the context. Some are very literal, some are quite metaphorical. However, they don't give you very difficult idioms. So I think you are like okay with the idiom section. However, when it comes to this finding the keyword, it can be quite tricky, and I suggest you to start reading as much as you can, and if you come up with a new word somewhere, try to find out the meaning so that it will be easier for you in the examination. And again, if you don't know the word, sometimes it helps to see the other option and negate the option and root out the option one by one. So let's see the vocabulary questions. So, and again, let me tell you that you need to read the question very carefully, because sometimes they ask you similar words, sometimes they ask you opposite words. So you need to see if they are asking for antonym or synonym, and then only answer the question. Do not rush into it, do not haste into answering the question. Number 1 question is, choose the right meaning of the given idiomatic phrase. He burnt his finger by inserting a nervous affair. See, like this is quite literal idiom, so you can understand by the sentence itself. He burnt his finger by inserting a nervous affairs means A, got himself into trouble, B, burnt himself, C, got himself insulted, D, got rebuked. Rebuked भनेको कसैलाई गाली गर्नु यहाँ हुँदैन यस्तो गर्नु हुँदैन भनेर भन्नु इज got rebuked. So he burnt his finger by inserting in neighbor's affairs. आफ्नो छिमेकीको अफेयरमा he tried to insert his finger and he got his finger burnt. So the correct answer is obviously not burnt himself. He didn't get himself insulted, he didn't get himself rebuked. So the correct answer is got himself into trouble. Choose the right word or phrase that is nearest in meaning to the given word docile. So docile ko meaning के हुन्छ? So let's see the option. Docile ko option के हो? Vague. Vague means lack of clarity. Submissive is accept things without any protestations. Stupid means not clever. Stubborn means obstinate, sticking to an idea. So if you see the word docile, it's not vague. Docile itself means shy, unprotesting kind of person. So the correct word for docile is submissive. Okay, so got himself into trouble and submissive is the correct answer. So let's move on to question number 3. Choose the closest in meaning to the underlined word in the given sentence. Last night's event was remarkable. I forgot to underline the word remarkable. The underlined word here is remarkable. Happening, we're talking about event here. Don't forget that we're talking about event here. Happening, happening can be used as a verb also, like this is happening right now, and happening can be used as adjective also. Happening means something which is very successful and it's a very in word right now. Youngsters used to use the word happening. Striking again means can be used as verb and as well as adjective. Striking very different, like very standing out. Escapade means an adventure, means an incident just full of adventures, and rampage means riot, like causing a lot of damage. So even we're talking about event, and if the event was remarkable, it is happening event. So the correct answer for this is happening. Pick out the word phrase opposite to the meaning of the given word. Antipathy. Antipathy ko opposite word भन्नु पर्ने छ. र antipathy itself means hatred, dislike, like all kind of negative emotions. Antipathy word. So number 1 option is indifference. Indifference means like कसैको पनि वास्ता नगर्नु, बेवास्ता गर्नु. That's indifference. Willingness means the readiness to do something. Escapade, again like I said before, escapade भनेको चाहिँ it's a incident full of thrill and adventure. That's escapade. And liking means to like something. So antipathy, if antipathy is hating something, if antipathy is disgusted by something, the opposite of antipathy is de-liking. So let's see the last question of today. Choose the right one word substitution for underlined life history of a person written by another. So life history of a person written by another लाई चाहिँ एउटा single शब्दले चाहिँ कुन शब्द, which is the right one? Number 1 is autobiography. You know, autobiography is a life history of a person written by himself or herself. आफैले लेखेकोलाई चाहिँ autobiography भन्छ. Bibliography means for a research purpose or for a paper writing, all the books you read, like all the researches, journals you read, it is called bibliography. Biography means आफ्नो life को बारेमा आफैले लेखेको कुरा is biography, and memoir means to write something out of your own memory. So that's memoir. So ABCD, of ABCD, the correct answer is biography. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this session. I told you about comprehension, we discussed passages of 2071 and we discussed vocabulary. I hope it did help you to understand the concept of comprehension. I hope the passage helped you to understand what you should be looking for in a passage, and vocabulary maybe helped you a bit. So that brings me to an end of this session. Thank you for your patience and wish you all the very best.